question that's been raised both by Beverly Blanning and Jackie Cook. Do you think old vines are better equipped to deal with drought and climate change?
Without a doubt, without a doubt. Most of our old vines in South Africa are dryland farmed. So they have no irrigation whatsoever, and they're bush vines. They survived, I think, in a way, because they're bush vines, because they never pruned too hard. But they are definitely better equipped to deal with the drought and the climatic stresses here, the cold winters, the extremely hot summers, and the drought. I've hardly ever seen an old vine that dies because of drought. It seems to just produce less because it's self-regulating. It reads the seasons.
Yeah.
It understands the seasons. It has a memory of the past seasons, and it deals with it in that way.
Yes. Fantastic. And actually, that idea of this memory isn't fanciful. We have attending Dylan Grigg from Adelaide in Australia, and he's done this research paper, which is really fascinating, on the epigenetic adaptation of vines. We've got that up on the site, actually. I really recommend for people who are interested to read that.
I hope Dylan's still awake. It must be about 1 o'clock in the morning, isn't it?
He was here. He might have sort of fallen asleep over his old vine Grenache by now. But and Rosa, another question, a Vitty question. Matthew McCulloch, from your pruning comment regarding old wood, is vine trunk disease an issue with South Africa's old vines?
Definitely it is. In some areas in our country, it's worse than others. Where there's, of course, more rain, it's a bigger problem. Some varieties have a bigger problem with woodborne diseases, like Sauvio Blanc and Cabernet Sauvignon. For me, if I cut into old wood, where do I know does the disease stop and where does it start? So I just leave it, and it will grow slowly. But I don't think you can stop it completely. I don't like to make big pruning wounds near the heart of the plant, which is near the soil. Because the moment you make a big pruning wound, you reintroduce new woodborne diseases.
Yeah. And actually picking up on that, I think one of both the excitements and the challenges is in building a kind of a global category is that we have to allow for the very localized terroirs and cultures of each place, but that doesn't detract from the messaging. And what we will be looking to achieve today is actually start to achieve today so that we can find some shared messaging. You've obviously done a fantastic job and great research proving the economic viability of old vines, and I do a lot of collective marketing, and the way I think about this project is it's like an uber generic marketing project. And although that can be challenging, I think it will also be really rewarding. So we're just going to sum up with a kind of, from our perspective, what we want to do next, summing up of today. And so I think my fellow Old Vine Conference founders are going to join me. Rosa and André, I just wanted to thank you so much for being here and for everything that you've done. Really, it's been a benchmark, and I know it's taken decades. And so, it's really inspirational. Yeah.
But Sarah, if I may, it's not just Rosa and I, it's literally a lot of people that's been helping us from the beginning. If we couldn't have done this, as I mentioned earlier, if we didn't get the seeds funding from Mr. Rupert that had the vision to make this a reality. And then the Chenin Blanc Association in South Africa, with their very first meeting on the agenda, Ina Smith told me the other day, she's a doyen of Chenin Blanc in South Africa. She said on their first agenda, high up, number 2, I think, was old vines. And they did the first research before we even started with University of Stellenbosch on the aroma wheel in terms of old vines to distinguish what's the difference between the aromas of old vine and young vine Chenin. And following that, Professor Berger at University of Stellenbosch also did research on old vine pilotage, and we are currently looking at old vine Shannon research in genetics as well. So there's a lot of people involved in this, along with our very loyal members that's supporting us. So it's not just the 2 or 3 of us, it's a lot of people that's been involved in the last 20 years.
And a lot of scientists. We have a lot of research going in South Africa at the moment on different subjects to do with old vineyards. And let's be realistic, before the old vine projects, before I even thought about old vines, Mark Kent produced his most beautiful Boekenhoutkloof Senior from that 100-year vineyard in Boekenhout in Franschhoek. And even Sadi made Mrs. Kirsten. So, you know, it's been a lovely ride for us, and we have a lot of support, and a lot of farmers joined the Old Vine Project. We're very happy at the moment. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I think, you know, maybe in another 10 years, we'll have a global old vine wine category. But the thing is, what we do now will ensure old vines in 50 years' time. So it's a culture, because you plant them not for 20 years, but for your lifetime. And it's that culture that changes, and to explain and have that culture valued, I think is transformative in so many ways.
What we realized very soon in the project is that it's not only about old vines, it's about planting to grow old. It's actually, as one of the speakers earlier said, for the future, that you can actually plant a vineyard that can last 30, 50 to 100 years if you pair the certified virus-free material with the right rootstock on the right site, and then the pruning is of course important.
Plant to grow old.
Yeah. A vine is for life, not just for Christmas.
Not just for Christmas.
Fantastic. Okay, so I think we're going to start to wrap up. I have one more question for you, Rosa. Rosa, this is from Dennis, who otherwise known as Artisan Swiss. And Dennis's question is, what do you think of Fauzi Issa's plan to go with no pruning on the newly discovered?
I loved his presentation. I like what he said a lot. I really respect his vision. I don't, for me, I'm romantic, but also very practical. Vineyards must be sustainable, and wild vineyards do not really produce enough to make them sustainable in South Africa at the moment. But if you can have a large enough farm and you have wild enough spaces, it would be fantastic to produce wild grapes from wild vines. But, you know, at the end of the day, it's the farmer must survive economically. It has to be sustainable. That's why it's so important for me not to be just overly romantic about old vines, but to actually give the farmer more money in his pocket to be able to survive and to be able to pay his farm workers more.